The transport ship descended through the orange clouds of Varith Prime. Commander Yelthra watched it with all four of her eyes. She stood at the edge of the landing platform, her armored body casting a long shadow in the light of 3 distant suns. Behind her, 12 of her finest first-year cadets waited in formation. They were young, but they were Vexari. They were predators, and today, they would meet humans for the first time. Yelthra had read the Coalition reports about humanity. A young species, soft skin, no claws, no natural armor, no venom. They came from a small blue world at the edge of explored space, and they had somehow talked their way into the Galactic Coalition just 15 years ago. Now they wanted to send an exchange delegation to the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. The High Council had approved the request. Yelthra had not been consulted. The transport landed with a gentle hiss of steam. The ramp lowered, and the humans walked out into the harsh sunlight of Varith Prime. There were 10 of them. Yelthra's secondary eyes scanned them quickly. 6 wore the formal uniforms of human military officers. 3 carried datapads and equipment cases. And 1 woman walked slightly apart from the others, her posture relaxed but alert. She was not tall. She was not impressive. She wore simple combat fatigues, and at her hip hung a short black stick. That was all. Just a stick. One of the cadets behind Yelthra made a clicking sound of amusement. She did not turn to silence him. She was thinking the same thing. The lead human stepped forward. His uniform marked him as Admiral Chen, the head of the delegation. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face. He extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Yelthra did not take it. She simply inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Welcome to the Vexari Military Academy," she said. Her translator turned her clicking speech into smooth human words. "I am Commander Yelthra. I oversee the training of all first-year cadets." "Thank you for receiving us," Admiral Chen said. He lowered his hand without showing any offense. "We are honored to be here." "The Coalition has ordered this exchange," Yelthra said. "Honor has nothing to do with it." She saw some of the humans shift uncomfortably. But Admiral Chen only smiled slightly. "Nevertheless," he said, "we hope to learn from each other." Yelthra made a sound that her translator could not convert. It was something between doubt and dismissal. She turned to lead them toward the main complex. As the group moved forward, one of her cadets stepped directly into the path of the woman with the black stick. His name was Threk, and he was the son of High Warlord Varaxis. He was young and proud and absolutely certain of his own superiority. Threk did not step around the human. He walked straight into her, his shoulder striking her with enough force to knock her backward. "Watch your path, small one," he said. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Prey should know its place. The other Vexari cadets made sounds of approval. Some of the humans tensed, but the woman simply caught her balance and looked up at Threk with calm, dark eyes. She did not speak. She did not react. She just watched him. Threk laughed and continued walking. The moment passed, but Yelthra had seen something strange. As the human woman looked at Threk, her eyes had moved across his body in a very specific way. She had looked at his joints, his throat, the gaps in his natural armor. She had mapped him like a hunter examining prey. Yelthra filed this observation away and said nothing. The tour of the academy took several hours. The humans asked polite questions about training methods and facilities. They seemed genuinely interested in learning. Admiral Chen was diplomatic and respectful. His officers were professional. The woman with the stick said nothing at all. Her name, according to the delegation manifest, was Sergeant Major Alina Vasquez. She was listed as security liaison. Yelthra did not understand why humans would send such a small person to handle security, but she did not ask. That evening, the delegation gathered in the reception hall for a formal dinner. Yelthra sat at the head of the table with Admiral Chen to her right. The food was traditional Vexari fare, which the humans ate carefully and without complaint. During the meal, Admiral Chen made a request. "Commander," he said, "we would be grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate human close-quarters combat techniques. Consider it a cultural exchange. Your cadets might find it educational." Yelthra's mandibles clicked in amusement. You wish to show us how humans fight? If it would not be too much trouble, it would be entertaining, Yelthra said. She did not hide the mockery in her voice. Very well. I will assign 12 of my first-year cadets to participate in your demonstration. They will use training weapons, of course. We would not want any accidents, of course, Admiral Chen said. His expression did not change. And if I may suggest, Sergeant Major Vasquez would be happy to represent our delegation. Yelthra looked at the small woman sitting quietly at the far end of the table. Vasquez met her gaze steadily. Yelthra said, Against 12 Vexari cadets? Yes, she carries only that stick. It is called a baton, Admiral Chen said. It is a non-lethal weapon. Yelthra stared at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound that her translator rendered as laughter. Then tomorrow will be very entertaining indeed, she said. Word of the demonstration spread quickly through the academy. By the next morning, half the cadets were talking about it. The humans wanted to show off their fighting skills. A single human female would face 12 Vexari warriors. She would use only a non-lethal stick. The jokes wrote themselves. In her quarters that night, Yelthra reviewed what she knew about humans. They were tool users. They were clever. They had somehow built starships and joined the galactic community, despite their obvious physical weaknesses. But cleverness would not help in combat. The Vexari were apex predators. Their ancestors had ruled their world for millions of years. They had never been prey. They had never needed to be. She felt almost sorry for the human woman, almost in the human quarters across the compound. Lena Vasquez sat alone on her bunk. She had removed her jacket and rolled up her sleeves. In her hands, she held a cloth, and she was slowly, methodically running it along the length of her baton. The baton was not a complex weapon. It was a simple rod of reinforced polymer, weighted for balance, designed for pain compliance and temporary incapacitation. It had no edge. It could not cut. It could not kill, but in the right hands, it could do things that most species could not imagine. Admiral Chen appeared in her doorway. He watched her for a moment without speaking. Are you ready? He finally asked. Vasquez looked up. Her face was calm. Her eyes were steady. 12 cadets, she said. First years. Never seen real combat. Never fought anything that wasn't already afraid of them. That's right. She returned her attention to the baton. Running the cloth along its surface one more time. I have no idea what's coming, she said quietly. And I'm not going to tell them. Chen nodded once and walked away. In the darkness of the human quarters, Elena Vasquez continued to prepare. Tomorrow, she would teach the Vexari something they had never learned in all their millions of years of evolution. She would teach them what happened. When prey stopped running, the Grand Assessment Arena was the heart of the Vexari Military Academy. It was a massive circular structure carved from the red stone of Vareth Prime over 10,000 years ago. Its walls rose high into the orange sky, and its seats could hold over 5,000 spectators. On this morning, nearly 3,000 of those seats were filled. Commander Yelthra had expected a small audience, perhaps 100 cadets, perhaps a few curious instructors. Instead, word of the demonstration had spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Everyone wanted to see the humans fight. Everyone wanted to watch them lose. Yelthra stood in the command box high above the arena floor. From here, she could see everything. The sand of the fighting ground was perfectly smooth, raked fresh that morning. The morning suns cast long shadows across the surface. Admiral Chen stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. His face showed no emotion at all. This is more attention than I expected, Chen said. Your people asked for a demonstration, Yelthra replied. My people wish to be demonstrated too. Chen made a small sound that might have been agreement. Below them, the 12 Vexari cadets entered the arena through the eastern gate. They walked in formation, their natural armor gleaming in the sunlight. Each of them stood over 8 feet tall. Each of them had 4 powerful arms, ending in claws that could tear through steel. They had been given padded training weapons, but their natural bodies were weapons enough. The crowd roared with approval. Threk walked at the front of the formation. His crest was raised high in a display of dominance. He looked up at the crowd and spread all 4 of his arms wide, accepting their praise. Then the western gate opened. Alina Vasquez walked onto the sand alone. She wore light training clothes. No armor, no helmet, no protection of any kind. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face. At her hip, her baton hung in its simple holster. The arena fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter began. It started small, just a few cadets in the lower seats, but it spread quickly. Soon, thousands of Exari were making sounds of mockery and amusement. This was the human warrior? This small, soft creature. Vasquez walked to the center of the arena and stopped. She looked around at the crowd without expression. Then she looked at the 12 cadets facing her. Threk stepped forward, separating himself from the group. He was still laughing, his mandibles clicking with delight. "I know you," he said loudly. His voice echoed across the arena. "You are the one I pushed yesterday? The small prey creature?" Vesca said nothing. "My world," Threk continued. "We have animals like you. Soft, weak. We hunt them for sport. They run and hide and squeal when we catch them." He looked back at his fellow cadets, encouraging their laughter. "Perhaps you will squeal for us today." The crowd loved it. The sound of their approval washed across the arena like a wave. In the command box, Admiral Chen turned to his aide, a young lieutenant named Park. "She was the unarmed combat instructor at Fort Bragg for 6 years, Chen said quietly. Lieutenant Park nodded slowly. "I know, sir." "Before that, 14 years in special operations, environments I am not allowed to name, operations that are still classified." Park swallowed nervously. "Should we have warned them?" Chun's expression did not change. They did not ask. Below, Commander Yelthra activated the arena's announcement system. Her voice boomed across the sand. "The rules of this demonstration are simple, yet the match ends when one side yields or is rendered unable to continue. Non-lethal force only. Permanent injury is forbidden." She paused, looking down at the small human woman standing alone against 12 Vexari warriors. "Begin when you are ready," the starting tone sounded, a deep bell that echoed off the ancient stone walls. Threk turned back to face Vasquez. He was still smiling. He began to walk toward her, taking his time, enjoying the moment. His fellow cadets spread out behind him, forming a half circle. "This will be quick," he said. "Almost feel sorry for you." Elena Vasquez reached down and drew her baton from its holster. She held it at her side, the black polymer catching the light. Then she pressed a small button near the handle. The baton extended with a quiet click. Almost doubling in length, she settled into a stance that none of the Vexari recognized. Her weight shifted to her back foot. Her knees bent slightly. The baton rose until it was level with her shoulder. Angled across her body, her eyes changed. Something in her gaze became very still and very cold. The calm expression remained, but behind it something woke up. Something that had been sleeping. In the command box, Yelthra noticed the change. She leaned forward slightly, her secondary eyes narrowing. On the arena floor, Threk noticed nothing. He was too confident, too certain. He charged. A Vexari charge is a terrifying thing. 8 feet of armored predator, 4 arms spread wide to grab and tear, claws extended, moving at incredible speed. Threk had practiced this attack since he could walk. He had never failed to bring down his target. He lunged forward with all his strength, absolutely certain that his claws would close around human flesh in less than a second. He was wrong. Vasquez moved. She did not move backward, away from the attack. She moved forward, into it. Her body twisted in a way that seemed impossible, sliding through the gap between Threk's upper arms. For a single heartbeat, she was inside his guard, closer to him than any opponent had ever been. Her baton struck once. The blow landed on a specific point beneath his second arm, where his natural armor did not quite meet. It was a nerve cluster, and she hit it with perfect precision. Threk's body spasmed. His legs stopped working. He crashed forward into the sand, sliding to a stop behind her. She was already moving toward the second cadet. The crowd went silent in the command box. Yelthra's mandibles stopped moving. Her 4 eyes were wide. "What?" she whispered. "Was that?" Admiral Chen did not answer. He was watching the arena floor with an expression that might have been satisfaction. The second cadet was faster to react than Threk. She raised her training weapon and swung hard at the approaching human. Her blow should have crushed bone. It hit nothing. Vasquez had already moved, flowing around the attack like water around stone. Her baton struck twice in rapid succession, targeting joints that the Vexari did not know were vulnerable. The second cadet fell. The remaining 10 cadets finally understood that something was wrong. They stopped spreading out and began to close in together, trying to use their numbers. They were trained warriors. They knew how to fight as a team, but they had never fought anything like this. Vasquez moved through them. She was not fast in the way the Vexari understood speed. She did not have the explosive power of a predator's charge. What she had was something else entirely. She had economy. She had precision. She had the ability to be exactly where her opponents were not, to strike exactly where they were weakest. The crowd watched in stunned silence as cadet after cadet fell to the sand. Each one dropped with a single sound of pain, their bodies temporarily paralyzed by strikes 2 nerve clusters they did not know existed. 3 down. 4, 5. The 7th cadet tried to grab Vasquez with all 4 arms at once. She ducked beneath. His reach struck the inside of his knee and was past him before he finished falling. 8, 9, 10. The last 2 cadets backed away, their confidence shattered. They looked at each other with something that might have been fear. Vasquez did not give them time to recover. She closed the distance in 2 steps. Her baton a blur of motion. 1 strike. 2. Both cadets collapsed. The arena was completely silent. Alina Vasquez stood in the center of 12 groaning, immobilized Vexari warriors. She was not breathing hard. Her expression had not changed. She retracted her baton with a quiet click and returned it to her holster. The entire engagement had lasted 11.4 seconds. In the command box, Commander Yelthra stood frozen. Her mandibles hung open. Her eyes were fixed on the small human woman standing alone on the sand. Finally, she found her voice. She said, her words echoing across the silent arena, "Are you?" Lena Vasquez looked up at her. She did not answer. Threk lay on the sand and tried to understand what had happened to him. His body would not move. His arms, all 4 of them, hung limp and useless at his sides. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. There was no pain, not really. Just an absence. A disconnection between his mind and his muscles. He remembered charging at the human. He remembered being absolutely certain of victory. He remembered the moment when everything changed. She had moved into his attack. Not away from it. Into it, as if she wanted to be closer to him, as if his strength and speed and claws meant nothing at all. Then there had been a flash of black, a single point of pressure beneath his arm, and the world had stopped making sense. Around him he could hear his fellow cadets groaning. 11 other warriors, each of them trained since hatching, each of them born to be predators. They were all on the ground. They were all helpless, and the human woman stood among them like she was waiting for something interesting to happen. The silence stretched across the arena. 3,000 Vexari spectators sat frozen in their seats. They had come to laugh. They'd come to watch the weak human be crushed. Instead, they had seen something impossible. Medical teams rushed onto the sand. They surrounded the fallen cadets, running scanners over their bodies. Threk heard fragments of their conversation. No permanent damage. Nerve cluster disruption. Temporary paralysis. This one is already recovering motor function. They were not injured. Not really. The human had struck with perfect precision, hitting points that would disable, but not destroy. She had taken them apart with surgical accuracy. She had done it without causing any lasting harm. Somehow, that made it worse. In the command box, Commander Yelthra stood absolutely still. Her secondary eyes kept replaying what she had seen, the human moving through her cadets like wind through tall grass. The baton striking with the speed of thought. The perfect economy of motion, no wasted movement, no unnecessary force. 11 seconds. 12 warriors. One small woman with a stick, Admiral Chen, stood beside her, his hands still clasped behind his back. Perhaps he said quietly, "We should discuss this in private." Yelthra did not respond immediately. She was watching the arena. Floor where Alina Vasquez was now helping the medical teams lift the cadets onto stretchers. The human moved among the fallen Vexari with calm efficiency, checking their vital signs. Speaking to the medics in a language they had to translate, she looked like a teacher helping students who had failed an examination. Finally, Yerluthra nodded. "Yes," she said. Her voice was rough. "I think we should." 1 hour later, they gathered in Commander Yelthra's private office. It was a large room, decorated with the trophies of a long military career. Weapons hung on the walls. Medals stood in display cases. The desk was carved from the bones of a creature that Yelthra had killed with her own claws during her final training mission. She sat behind that desk now, her forearms folded across her chest. Admiral Chen sat across from her. Sergeant Major Vasquez stood near the door, her expression neutral. "Explain," Yelthra said. "It was not a request." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. He seemed to be choosing his words with care. "What you saw today was not a trick," he began. "It was not technology or deception. It was simply skill." "Skill," Yelthra's mandibles clicked with something that was not quite anger. "Your soldier defeated 12 Vexari cadets in 11 seconds. With a stick, a baton," Chen corrected gently, "and yes, she did." "How?" Chen leaned forward slightly. His old eyes were steady and calm. "Commander, what do you know about human evolution?" Yelthra made a dismissive sound. "Your species comes from a small world. You are prey animals. Soft skin, dull claws, slow speed. You should not have survived." "That is true," Chen said. "By all logic, we should have been eaten by predators millions of years ago. But we were not." "Do you know why?" Yelthra did not answer. "We survived because we learned," Chen continued. "We could not run fast, so we learned to run far. We could not fight with claws, so we made tools. We could not overpower predators, so we out-fought them." He paused, letting his words settle. "Your species evolved as apex predators. You have never been hunted. You have never needed to adapt to threats greater than yourselves. But humans spent millions of years being prey. We learned to survive against creatures faster, stronger, and deadlier than us. We learned to find weaknesses in things that should have no weaknesses." Yelthra's secondary eyes narrowed. "You are saying that being prey made you dangerous?" "Yes." Chun's voice was soft. "But that is not the most dangerous thing about us." He glanced at Vasquez, who stood silently by the door. "The most dangerous thing about humans is that we spent our entire history fighting each other. Every generation of human warriors studied the previous generation and found ways to be better. Every technique was tested, refined, perfected. We have thousands of years of accumulated combat knowledge, developed against the most adaptable opponent in the universe." "Yourselves," Yelthra said. "Ourselves." The room fell silent. Yelthra stared at the human admiral, her 4 eyes moving slowly across his face. "Sergeant Major Vasquez," Chen continued, "is highly trained by human standards. But she is not exceptional. She is not unique. There are millions of humans with similar capabilities." The word hung in the air like a thundercloud. Millions. Yelthra turned her gaze to Vasquez. The human woman had not moved. Her expression had not changed. She looked exactly like she had before the fight. Calm, alert, unremarkable. And yet she had dismantled 12 Vexari warriors like they were children playing at war. "Your cadets fight like predators," Chen said. "They are aggressive, direct, overwhelming. They have never needed to be anything else. But Sergeant Major Vasquez is trained in 17 different human combat disciplines. She spent her career learning how to disable larger, stronger, better-armed opponents, because that is what humans always face." Yelthra's claws scraped against her desk. It was an unconscious gesture of stress. "You called us prey," Chen said quietly. "You were not wrong. But prey species learn to be clever, Commander. Prey species learn to survive." For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of understanding settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Finally, Yelthra spoke. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked," Chen said simply. And because we are supposed to be allies, the coalition brought us together for a reason. We have things to learn from each other. Yelthra made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. What could we possibly learn from you? How to be weak. How to be small. It was Vasquez who answered. Her voice was calm and even, the first words she had spoken since the fight. You could learn how to fight something stronger than yourselves. Yelthra turned sharply. Her eyes locked with the humans.
Your cadets are good,
Vasquez continued. They are strong, fast, well-trained, but they have never faced a real challenge. They have never fought something that was not afraid of them. They have patterns, habits, assumptions. They think like predators, and that makes them predictable. She took one step forward. I could teach them to be unpredictable. The offer hung in the air between them. Yelthra stared at the small human woman who had humiliated her finest students. Why? She asked. Why would you help us? Vasquez's expression did not change. Because someday you might face an enemy that does not care how strong you are. An enemy that has learned to find weaknesses in things that should have no weaknesses. She paused. When that day comes, you will want to know what I know. Yelthra said nothing. But somewhere deep in her predator's mind, something shifted. For the first time in her life, she wondered if being prey might be an advantage after all. The medical wing of the Vexery Military Academy was built for warriors. The beds were large enough to hold 8-foot predators. The equipment was designed to treat injuries from training accidents, combat exercises, and the occasional honor duel. The walls were decorated with images of famous battles and legendary warriors. Threk lay in one of those. Bedzin stared at the ceiling. His body was working again. The paralysis had faded within 20 minutes, just as the human medics had predicted. There was no lasting damage, no permanent injury. In a few hours, he would be completely recovered, but his pride would take longer to heal. Around him, his fellow cadets rested in their own beds. Some of them were already awake, talking quietly among themselves. The conversation kept returning to the same topic: the human, the fight, the impossibility of what they had witnessed. Threk did not join their discussion. He lay still and replayed the moment of his defeat over and over in his mind. He had been so certain, so absolutely confident. He had charged at the human with all his strength, knowing that his claws would tear through her soft flesh, knowing that she would fall beneath his power like every opponent he had ever faced, and she had simply stepped inside his attack and turned off his body with a single touch. The door to the medical wing slid open. Threk turned his head and felt his body tense. Elena Vasquez walked into the room. She moved quietly without hurry. Her baton was still at her hip, but her hands hung empty at her sides. She looked around the room at the 12 cadets she had defeated, and her expression showed nothing at all. The other cadets fell silent. Some of them tried to sit up straighter. Others looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Vasquez stopped at the foot of Threk's bed. You are the son of High Warlord Verixis, she said. It was not a question. Threk's mandibles clicked in surprise. How do you know that? I read the personnel files before I came here. I'd like to know who I am working with. She pulled a chair from the corner of the room and sat down beside his bed. The casual nature of the gesture was almost more shocking than her words. Threk stared at her. Why are you here? To talk? About what? Vasquez tilted her head slightly. About what happened in the arena. Threk felt anger rise in his chest. His claws flexed against the sheets of his bed. You came to mock us, to enjoy your victory. No. Ow. Her voice was calm and level. I came to explain. She leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes fixed on his. You lost today because you made assumptions. You saw a small opponent with a simple weapon, and you decided the fight was already over. You charged straight at me, all forearms wide, every movement telegraphed before you made it. Threk's anger faded into confusion. Telegraphed. You showed me what you were going to do before you did it. Your body position, your weight distribution, the angle of your charge. I knew exactly where your arms would be, and exactly when they would get there. All I had to do was not be in that place at that moment. She reached down and drew her baton from its holster. Threk flinched involuntarily, but she did not extend it. She simply held it in her hand, turning it slowly. "No. This weapon cannot cut through your armor. It cannot pierce your carapace. It cannot match the reach of your claws or the strength of your arms. By every logical measure, it should be useless against a Vexery warrior." She looked up at him. "But logic does not win fights. Understanding does." Threk said nothing. He was listening now, his anger replaced by something else. Curiosity, interest, a need to know. "Your species evolved as apex predators," Vasquez continued. "You have natural armor, natural weapons, natural strength. You developed fighting styles that emphasize these advantages: direct attacks, overwhelming force, speed and aggression." She set the baton on her knee. "But these advantages created blind spots. You assume that strength will overcome weakness. You assume that armor will protect you from harm. You assume that your opponents will react the way prey reacts, by running away or freezing in fear. And you did not react that way," Threk said slowly. "I moved toward you instead of away. I entered your guard instead of avoiding it. I targeted nerve clusters that your armor does not cover because no predator on your world ever evolved to strike there." Threk processed this information. His secondary eyes narrowed as he considered her words. "You studied us," he said. "You found our weaknesses. Yes. Before you ever set foot on Varath Prime." The admission should have made him angry. Instead, he felt something unexpected. Respect. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Vasquez was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different. Softer. Somehow. "Yesterday, you pushed me in the corridor. You called me prey. You said you would make me squeal." Threk felt shame creep through his body. His crest lowered slightly. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "Yes, you were." She paused. "But you were also young, and arrogant, and untested. You had never failed at anything in your life, so you did not know how to handle the possibility of failure." She leaned back in her chair. "On my world, we have a saying: the best teacher is defeat. Every warrior must learn to lose before they can truly learn to win." Threk stared at her. "You are offering to teach me. I am offering to teach all of you." She gestured at the other cadets, who were now openly listening to the conversation. "You have strength and speed and natural weapons that humans will never possess. But you fight like predators, and the galaxy is full of things that are not afraid of predators." She stood up from her chair. "Tomorrow, I will be conducting training sessions in the secondary arena. Admiral Chen has received permission from Commander Yelthra. Any cadet who wishes to learn may attend." She turned toward the door, then stopped. "The techniques I know were developed by humans over thousands of years. They were designed to help small, weak creatures defeat larger, stronger opponents. If you combine these techniques with your natural advantages, you will become something the galaxy has never seen before." Threk sat up in his bed. His body was still weak, but his mind was racing. "Why would you help us?" he asked. "I dishonored you. I treated you like prey." Vasquez looked back at him. For the first time, something like warmth entered her expression. "You are a student who made a mistake," she said. "I am a teacher. It is my job to help students learn from their mistakes." Walk toward the door. As she reached it, she paused one more time. "Besides," she said, "on my world, we do not judge people by their worst moments. We judge them by what they do next." The door slid open, and she was gone. Threk sat in his bed for a long time after she left. Around him, the other cadets began to talk again. But now the tone was different. There was no anger, no shame. There was something that sounded almost like hope. Finally, one of them spoke up. "I am going to the training session tomorrow." "So am I," said another. One by one, they all agreed. Even the ones who had been most humiliated. Even the ones who had laughed the loudest before the fight. Threk said nothing. He simply lay back in his bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he would begin to learn. Tomorrow, he would start to become something more than he had been. And someday, He would be worthy of the respect that Elena Vasquez had already shown him. 3 months passed on Verith Prime. The orange clouds still swirled overhead. The 3 suns still rose and set in their ancient patterns. The Grand Assessment Arena still stood at the heart of the Academy, its red stone walls unchanged by time. But inside those walls, something had transformed. Commander Yelthra stood on the observation platform above the secondary training arena. Below her, 30 Vexari cadets moved through combat drills that would have been unrecognizable 3 months ago. They did not charge blindly. They did not rely on strength alone. They flowed across the training floor like water, adapting, adjusting, finding angles of attack that their ancestors had never imagined. At the center of the group, Threk moved with particular grace. His 4 arms worked in perfect coordination, but not in the old Vexari patterns. He combined the power of his natural form with something new, something human. He ducked beneath a training strike from his partner, slipped inside her guard, and tapped her nerve cluster with a padded training weapon. She stumbled, surprised, then laughed and reset her position. 3 months ago, such a sound would have been impossible. Vexari did not laugh when they were defeated. They raged. They demanded revenge. They saw failure as a permanent stain on their honor. Now they laughed, learned, and tried again. Elena Vasquez walked among the cadets, offering corrections and encouragement. She had not grown taller in 3 months. She had not developed armor or claws. She was still the same small human who had walked off that transport ship, but the cadets no longer saw prey when they looked at her. They saw their teacher. Commander Yelthra descended the stairs and walked across the training floor. The cadets noticed her approach and paused their exercises. Threk stepped forward to greet her, his crest lowered in respect. "Commander," he said, "we were not expecting you today. I came to observe." Yelthra looked around at the cadets, her 4 eyes taking in every detail. "You have changed." "Yes, Commander. Show me." Nodded. He turned to face one of the training dummies, a heavy construct designed to simulate an armored opponent. He settled into a fighting stance that was neither fully Vexari nor fully human. It was something new. Something in between. He attacked. His first strike was pure Vexari power. A sweeping blow with his primary arms that would have crushed bone. But when the dummy's mechanical arms rose to block, he was already moving. He shifted his weight, dropped low, and struck with his secondary arms at an angle that no Vexari had ever used before. The blow landed on the dummy's joint, exactly where the armor was weakest. The impact registered on the training computer as a disabling hit, but Threk was not finished. He continued to move, flowing around the dummy's counterattack, striking again and again at vulnerable points. His claws and his technique worked together, predator's strength guided by prey cunning. When he stopped, the training computer displayed his score. It was the highest the Academy had ever recorded for a first-year cadet. Yelthra stared at the display for a long moment. "The Vexari have trained warriors for 10,000 years, she said slowly. "We believed our methods were perfect. We believed we had nothing to learn." She turned to face Vasquez, who stood quietly at the edge of the training floor. "We were wrong." Vasquez inclined her head slightly. "Every warrior has something to learn. That is not weakness. It is truth." Yelthra made a sound that might have been agreement. 2 weeks later, the Vexari Dominion submitted a formal request to the Galactic Coalition. They asked for permanent human combat instructors to be assigned to their military academy, not as visitors, not as guests. As teachers, the request was approved within 3 days. On the day the announcement was made, another demonstration was held in the Grand Assessment Arena. But this time, the mood was different. The crowd did not come to mock. They came to witness. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the arena. Around her, 12 cadets took their positions. The same 12 who had faced her 3 months ago. They had trained every day since their defeat. They had learned human techniques and blended them with their natural abilities. They had become something new. The starting tone sounded. This time, when they moved, they did not charge blindly. They spread out, working as a team. They watched for openings. They adapted to Vasquez's movements. The fight lasted 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Vasquez still won. She was still faster, still more precise, still more experienced. When the last cadet fell, she stood in the center of the arena once again. But this time, she was breathing hard. This time, her uniform showed the marks of strikes that had almost landed. This time, the cadets had made her work for her victory. The crowd did not laugh. They roared with approval. Threk rose from the sand and walked toward Vasquez. His body ached from the training strikes he had received, but his crest was held high. He stopped in front of her and placed one clawed fist over his thorax. It was the vexillary gesture of deepest respect. Reserved for honored elders and legendary warriors, Vasquez returned it with a human salute. "You have learned well," she said. "I have had a good teacher around them." The other cadets rose and repeated the gesture. One by one, the entire arena fell into respectful silence. Commander Yelthra stood in her observation box, watching the scene below. Beside her, Admiral Chen clasped his hands behind his back. "Your people confuse me," Yelthra said quietly. "You are small, soft. Your natural weapons are laughable. And yet my finest warriors now beg to learn from you." "There's an old human saying," Chen replied. "It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog." Yelthra's translator struggled with the idiom, but she grasped the meaning. "You are strange creatures," she said. "Yes," Chen agreed. "We are." That evening, a report was filed with the Galactic Coalition Intelligence Division. It was written by a vexillary analyst who had witnessed the demonstration. It was marked as highest priority. The report read as follows: "Initial assessment of humanity as a non-threat. Prey species is hereby revised. All previous classifications are to be considered null and void. New classification is required immediately. Humans are not prey. They evolved as prey, but they have transcended that origin. They have spent their entire existence learning to defeat creatures stronger than themselves. They have developed combat techniques that exploit weaknesses no predator species would think to protect. They have turned their disadvantages into advantages. More dangerously, they share this knowledge freely. They teach. They mentor. They transform former opponents into allies who combine their own strengths with human cunning. Threat level: unprecedented. Recommendation: maintain alliance with humanity at all costs. Under no circumstances should humanity be engaged as an enemy. Any species that makes this mistake will face not only human warriors, but every species that humans have trained and befriended. The galaxy has enough predators. It did not need one that cannot be stopped, but it has one now." The report was filed and distributed to every member species of the Galactic Coalition, and on Vareth Prime. Elena Vasquez continued to teach. She was one woman, small, soft, armed with nothing but a simple baton and thousands of years of human experience. And because of her, the galaxy would never be the same. On the transport platform where she had first arrived, Vasquez stood alone in the evening light. The 3 suns were setting, painting the orange clouds in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, the sounds of the academy continued. Cadets training. Instructors calling out corrections. The steady rhythm of warriors learning to become something more. Threk approached and stood beside her. "You will stay?" he asked. Vasquez looked out at the alien sunset. "For now," she said, "there is still much to teach, and much to learn. What could you possibly learn from us?" She turned to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was warmth in her eyes. "How to be strong," she said. "How to be fearless. How to face the universe with the confidence of a predator." Threk considered this. "And in exchange, you teach us how to be clever. How to survive. How to find strength in weakness." Yes, they stood together in silence, 2 warriors from opposite ends of evolution. "Perhaps," Threk said slowly, "that is what the galaxy truly needs. Not predators or prey, but something that is both." Vasquez smiled. Perhaps she agreed. The suns continued to set. The stars began to appear. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the word was spreading. humanity had arrived, and they brought lessons that the galaxy would never forget.